Steam Deck or Nintendo Switch 2? Which one is better? Let's talk about it.
Crashing through castles, we're taking the flag. Link's got a bomb and a worn out swag. Charmander's lit and the battle's begun. Mario jumps while we're on the run. With Nintendo news and games, we're in the know. Super Trentendo, let's go.
Welcome back to Super Trentendo. Like I said, today we are talking Steam Deck or Switch 2. Since the launch of Switch 2 last week, this has been a wild debate on which one is best, which one should you get. So we're going to talk about it today. I've had a Steam Deck since the launch, and I've loved it, but now I've got a Switch 2. Which one is better? So we're going to hop onto that. So before we do, hit that subscribe button and like this video if you enjoy this type of stuff. And let's dive in, because I think there's a really interesting debate here about which one you should pick up if you're only going to pick up one. Or maybe if you want to get both. I think they're both very different machines and there's a use case to have both. So let's talk about it. First up, let's go with the Steam Deck. Okay, first up, Steam Deck. It is chunkier than Nintendo Switch. If you're going to look at it, it's thicker, it's wider, it is heavier. Just holding the two, Steam Deck is heavier. The screen sizes are about the same, and you can get an OLED version of the Steam Deck though, so that is one thing that you can, if you're really interested in an OLED, there is an OLED version of the Steam Deck. There's not an OLED version of Switch 2 right now. Probably going to happen down the line, but as far as right now, not a thing. The Steam Deck is also going to be cheaper. Not a ton cheaper, but it is still cheaper. You can get an LCD version for about $400, so 50 to $100 depending on which version of Switch 2 you get cheaper. If you do want the OLED version though, that is $550, so that's where it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but you do get an OLED screen there as well. So those are some pros for the Steam Deck. Going with Steam as well as an operating system, because it ties into the Steam store and stuff. All your games are going to be there. You do get a really good deal on games. There's sales all the time on Steam. If you have a PC game, if you know PC gaming at all, there's sales all the time. You can get really good deals, and that opens up a ton of variety for Steam Deck. Now you also get a ton of there's a lot of variety because it is a PC. You can get tons and tons of games. There's a lot of stuff that comes to Steam Deck that you can't get on Nintendo Switch, but now will that change? Will we see more of these types of games that are usually on PC and PS5? Will they come over to Switch 2 now with the stronger processing power? Time will tell, but at the time being, there's going to be a lot of games on Steam Deck that we don't have on Nintendo systems right now. Another pro for the Steam Deck is the customization that it offers. There's a ton of stuff that you can do with the Steam Deck. It is like one of the most versatile things out on the market right now as far as gaming. You can play emulated stuff. You can play current stuff. So there's like a lot of customization, and you can really just like tailor games to your needs and to your desires. If you find something that you like, you can tweak it to make sure you're running it just right. You can get it into different like visual modes, like there's modding. So there's a ton of stuff that you can do with the games, and just being able to do a lot of that types of things on Steam Deck that you can't do with a traditional console, and that was where the Switch falls into. But that being said, that takes a lot more setup. So as far as an end general consumer is concerned, I feel like they're going to lean more towards a Switch 2 because of the customizations, like how long it can take. Now, I know for a lot of people, if you're watching this and you're screaming, this is not that difficult, it's easy there's videos. Yeah, there is. But for people that just want to grab something and go, they don't want to sit and watch a video on how to optimize their game. They don't want to watch a video on how to install an emulator and then go and find the ROMs to download. They don't want to figure out how to install Switch stuff and worry about getting the Nintendo Ninjas after them. Like, I know that you can play Switch games on the Steam Deck. I know that there's probably going to be a time where the Switch 2 games are going to be playable. People don't want to necessarily do that. They don't want to do the illegal stuff. They don't want to fall into that area of the internet. So they're not going to do it. And while I know it's easy and people think that that's what they'd like to do, at the end of the day, I feel like that's where people are going to fall into the Switch 2. Another downside to the Switch, or to the Steam Deck rather, It's going to be the similar problem with the Switch 2, though, is that there's not very many physical games. Like, there's no physical games for Steam Deck. That's just, like, Switch 2, we're having this whole debate on there's not going to be a ton of physical games. Nintendo games will be physical, it sounds like, but third parties are not doing that. There's no physical games for Steam Deck. If you are a physical collector, good luck. There's nothing for Steam Deck that you're going to be able to actually physically collect. It's all going to be downloads. It's going to take up a ton of space. You're going to need those SD cards, which again adds to the cost, but the SD cards, at least you can buy a regular micro SD card instead of the express ones for the Switch 2, so it is cheaper there. But the game sizes for the Steam Deck, they're huge. They're going to be way bigger than anything for the Switch 2. I mean, even to look at Cyberpunk, I'll bet, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I know that they were able to get it on a cart for Switch 2. I'll bet it's way more for a Steam Deck. Like, you're going to have not very many games downloaded, probably because of how much space it takes up. So you're going to be going through games a lot more as far as taking them off and then re-downloading them or moving games around. That's going to be your problem on the Steam Deck. But like I said, it is more versatile. So let's go back to the Switch 2 now. We've talked Steam Deck a little bit. Switch 2, cons. You have to use the Micro Express SD card. Super annoying, not gonna lie. I was lucky enough to be able to get one from Walmart. They're on brand. I saw a thing, it said Nintendo was saying that they are Lexar Play cards that are basically just white labeled to Walmart's brand. That makes me pretty happy, honestly. You know, you hear about stuff like this. If you actually, fun fact, if you didn't know, Costco batteries are actually Duracell batteries, just with the Kirkland Signature label on there. So just get the Kirkland Signatures instead of the Duracell because of the same battery for cheaper. That's what's going on here with the SD cards. So that was nice. I picked up the 512 gigs from Walmart at $65. So that makes it a little bit cheaper. Like I saw one from GameStop, the 1 terabyte, like $200. That's just ridiculous. But they are more expensive. So that is the one thing. You're going to see games take up a lot of space on here as well. Another downfall for the Switch that you're seeing for the Steam Deck. But the game sizes are going to be compressed. Nintendo specific games rather will be smaller. Nintendo does a great job of that. But as far as third-party games, they're not going digital, or they're not going physical. They're going digital for the most part, or they're going game key cards, and then they're going to be bigger. There's going to be downloads. It's going to take up a lot of space. So you might be going back and forth with games on your Switch 2 as well, just like you are in your Steam Deck. The Switch 2 doesn't have the customizations of the Steam Deck, obviously. You can't go in and put on your emulators. You can't go in and do custom boots. You can't optimize games. Just the way it runs is the way it runs. So at the end of the day, that's going to be, if you want to do the customizations, that's where the Steam Deck's going to be better. Battery life for both of these is not all that amazing. Steam Deck, I have to play it with it plugged in for the most part. Granted, I do have a launch console, so maybe it's just because it's older now. Switch 2, the battery life's not amazing. Games are running harder games. It makes sense a little bit. So that's something you have to watch out for. If you're going to be doing extended handheld sessions, it's going to run out of batteries probably. So you're going to have to make sure you have that plug handy. You're going to want to make sure that you have the charging ability. It's just going to be the nature of the game with any handheld, it feels like nowadays, because of the games that they're running and how much battery and how much power it uses to run those games. So at the end of the day though, which one is better? It's not really, I don't feel like it's a fair comparison. They're two totally different machines. Like I said, I've played a ton of different stuff on here. I've played like hundreds of hours of Civ. I played Last of Us. I played Red Dead Redemption. I've played, like, Spider-Man was on here. I played Jedi Fallen Order. Like, I've played so many games. You know, I've got tons of GameCube games, 64 games. Like, I've played a plethora of stuff on my Steam Deck. I love it. But at the same time, Switch 2 is going to be fun. I'm going to love to play the Switch games. I don't have Switch games on here. I'm not pirating stuff. I'm not doing all that stuff. If you want to do it, I'm not telling you can't. Go for it. That's going to be one plus for you then for the Steam Deck. But as far as just getting something and going and grabbing it easy, I like the Switch 2. I don't love having to sit and optimize games. Like, I played Hogwarts Legacy on here. I played like over 120 hours or something of Hogwarts Legacy on Nintendo Switch or on Steam Deck. I had to like sit and optimize a little bit. Even for games that are Steam Deck verified, sometimes you have to sit and try to play with the settings to get them to run. I know there's videos, I know it's not that hard, but at the end of the day, you know, I'm a working dad. I go to work all day, I come home, put kids to sleep, and I don't have that much time to game. I don't want to sit and waste 30 minutes or an hour trying to get something to run right so I can play it. Granted, once you get it set up, you can leave it, I get that, but at the same time, I'd rather just grab something and go play for a little bit. So at the end of the day, you know, I don't mind watching a video though. I can do it. I love Steam Deck. I love Switch 2. I think there's room for both. I actually even use my Steam Deck to do virtual plays or like, I don't even remember, the cloud plays or something, like streams. There we go. stream my Xbox to my Steam Deck so I can play Xbox in handheld mode. You know, I can play my College Football 25 or 26. I'm excited for that when the game will come out soon. I'll play that from my Steam Deck. I'll play NHL from my Xbox on my Steam Deck. I played tons of Xbox games on my Steam Deck as a handheld. And that battery life actually works better because it's actually just streaming. So it's like I've got a pretty good internet connection. It works well. So that was really nice. I played Starfield that way. So Steam Deck is awesome. I feel like there's room in my life for both the Steam Deck and the Nintendo Switch 2. I will use both. I'm not getting, I was thought about getting rid of my Steam Deck. Probably not gonna at this point because I feel like there's room for both. I can do things my Steam Deck, my Switch 2 can't do, and I can do stuff on my Switch 2 that the Steam Deck can't do right now. You know, like I said, I think the Steam Deck will probably be able to run Switch 2 games in the future, but I'm not into the pirating. I don't want to deal with the Nintendo Ninjas. I don't want to try to figure all that stuff out. You know what? It's not for me. So there's room for both, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down below. I know that there's going to be tons of fanboys for both sides in the comments. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on one or the other, but like I said, I think that there is room for both systems, and I love both just the same. They're fun stuff. I just love gaming. What can I say? But love to hear your guys' thoughts down below. Like I said, hope you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button, like this video. Steam Deck or Switch 2, let me know. And until next time, catch you later.